The person you love lost control last night. And their best friend finally exposed their secret. Don't scroll away yet, because what happened last night was not a normal emotional moment. In this fictional story, the person you love did not just get quiet, irritated, or overwhelmed. They lost control. Completely. Not in a dangerous way, not in a dramatic movie scene kind of way, but in the emotional sense that every feeling they had been forcing down finally came out at once. And the person who saw it happen was their best friend. The one person who had watched them hide this secret for far too long. The one person who knew exactly why your name could change their entire mood. The one person who had listened to them deny, minimize, avoid, and pretend. And last night, that friend finally had enough. They exposed the truth your person had been trying desperately not to say. So stay with me, because the shocking part is not only what the best friend revealed. It is why your person broke down the moment the secret was spoken aloud. It started with something small. Almost nothing. Maybe your name came up in conversation. Maybe someone mentioned that you seemed distant lately. Maybe your person saw something connected to you that made them realize you were moving forward without waiting for them. At first, they acted like it did not matter. They laughed. Changed the subject. Said they were fine. The usual pattern. But their best friend knew them too well. They noticed the way your person stopped making eye contact. The way they checked their phone without reason. The way their voice changed when the conversation turned toward you. And eventually the friend asked one simple question. What happened? Your person replied, nothing. Too quickly. The friend waited. What happened with them? Again, your person tried to avoid it. Nothing happened. But this time the best friend did not accept the answer. They had seen this before. Every time something between you and your person became emotionally intense, your person would do the same thing. Pull inward. Act casual. Pretend the situation was smaller than it really was. Then spend hours later thinking about you. So the friend said, "You've been acting weird all night." Your person immediately became defensive. "I'm not acting weird." "Yes, you are." "I'm tired." "No. You're upset." Silence. Your person looked away. That silence told the friend everything. And then came the question that began cracking the wall. Did they finally stop chasing you? Your person turned sharply. What? The best friend did not soften it. Did they stop reaching out? Your person stared. Because yes. Something had changed. Recently, you had become quieter. Not cruel. Not cold. Just different. You stopped carrying every conversation. Stopped filling every silence. Stopped giving endless emotional opportunities to someone who kept hesitating. Your person had noticed. Of course they had. But they had been trying to convince themselves it meant nothing. Maybe you were busy. Maybe you needed space. Maybe everything would return to normal. But the best friend had apparently noticed too. And hearing someone else say it made the possibility feel real. Your person said, They haven't stopped talking to me. The friend replied. That's not what I asked. Silence. Did they stop trying? That word. Trying. Your person felt it somewhere deep. Because maybe you had. Not because you stopped caring. Because you were tired of trying alone. And suddenly your person became angry. Not at you exactly. At the situation. At themselves. At the friend for saying out loud what they were trying not to think. They said, "Why are you making this into something?" The friend stared at them. "I'm not making it into anything. You already did." Your person shook their head. "You don't know what you're talking about." And that was when the friend finally said, "I know more than you think." Everything changed. Your person stopped. What does that mean? The friend hesitated. This was the moment. The secret had been sitting between them for months. Maybe longer. The best friend had watched your person check your messages. Had watched them smile at things you sent. Had listened to them talk about you while pretending every story was casual. Had seen them become jealous and then deny it. Had heard them say your name on days when nobody had even asked. And they had kept the secret because your person clearly was not ready to admit it. Until last night. The friend said, "You love them." Your person froze. Completely. Not because they had never thought the word. Because nobody had ever said it directly to their face before. "You're ridiculous," your person replied. But their voice sounded different. The friend continued. "No. What's ridiculous is how long you've been pretending you don't." Your person stood up. They started pacing. "I never said that." "You don't have to." The friend pointed toward the phone in their hand. "You check that thing every 5 minutes when they haven't replied." Your person immediately put the phone down. "That doesn't mean anything. You know their schedule." Silence. "You remember tiny things they told you months ago." Another pause. "You get irritated when somebody talks about them like they're available." Your person looked away. "And every time they get close enough that you might actually have to tell them how you feel, you disappear." That was when something inside your person snapped. Stop. The word came louder than expected. The friend became quiet. Your person's breathing changed. Because they were no longer arguing with the friend. They were arguing with themselves. Everything being said was true. And truth becomes painful when someone has spent too long building a life around avoiding it. Your person repeated. Stop. But their voice broke slightly. The best friend saw it. And instead of stopping completely, they softened. I'm not trying to hurt you. Your person laughed bitterly. Well, you're doing a great job. I'm trying to make you see what you're doing. What am I doing? You're waiting until they give up. That sentence changed everything. Your person stared at them. What? The friend continued carefully. You keep telling yourself you need time. You keep saying you're confused. You keep saying you don't know what this is. But I've watched you for months. Your person's eyes started filling. The friend said, "You're not confused about them." Pause. "You're scared of them mattering." That was the secret beneath the secret. Not whether your person cared. Not whether attraction existed. The real problem was how deeply you mattered. And suddenly, your person could not hold themselves together anymore. They turned away. Covered their face. Tried to breathe. But the emotion came too quickly. Months of fear. Regret. Longing. Every conversation they replayed. Every almost confession. Every time they watched your name disappear from their screen and wanted to message again but stopped themselves. It all came up. The best friend stayed quiet for a moment. Then your person said something through tears. "I don't know how to do this." The friend asked softly. "Do what?" "Need someone." There it was. The confession. Not love yet. Something even more vulnerable. Need. Your person had built themselves around independence. Around the belief that needing someone gave that person the power to destroy you. Maybe a past relationship taught them that. Maybe family. Maybe loss. Maybe they simply learned early that expectations create disappointment. So they became good at appearing self-contained. And then you appeared. And suddenly they cared where you were. They cared whether you replied. They cared what you thought. They noticed when your energy shifted. Your happiness affected them. Your distance affected them. And they hated how little control they had over that. The best friend finally understood why every meaningful moment between you had been followed by withdrawal. Your person was not pulling away because they felt too little. They pulled away because they felt too much. The friend sat closer and said, "You don't need them." Your person looked up through tears. "What? You want them. They matter. That's different from needing them to survive." Your person shook their head. "It doesn't feel different." The friend replied, "Because you've spent your whole life believing attachment means losing control." Your person did not answer. That sentence landed. Then the best friend added, "And now you're about to lose someone because you're more afraid of losing control than losing them." That was when your person really lost it. The tears became louder. Their breathing became uneven. They sat down and covered their face. And the sentence they had been hiding finally came out. "I love them." The friend went completely still. Your person repeated it. Almost angry now. "I love them." Another breath. "And I don't know what to do with that." There it was. The secret exposed. Not through gossip. Not betrayal. Because your person could not carry it anymore. And once those words were spoken, everything changed. If you're enjoying this fictional soulmate-style emotional story, subscribe and stay close, because the best friend had not exposed the biggest secret yet. What they said next revealed that your person had already made a private decision about you weeks ago, one they never told you about. The friend waited until your person calmed slightly. Then they asked, "How long have you known?" Your person wiped their face. I don't know. That's not true. Silence. The friend continued. When did you know it wasn't just attraction? Your person stared at the floor. Then a memory returned. A day when something difficult had happened. Maybe your person was exhausted. Maybe they felt like everything was going wrong. They had not told many people. But somehow you noticed. You did not demand details. You simply sensed something. Maybe. You don't have to explain anything. I just wanted you to know you're not alone. The message had stayed with them. At the time, they replied casually. Maybe, thank you. Nothing more. But later that night, they read it again. And something inside them changed. Because you were not trying to fix them. You were simply present. Your person told the friend. That night. What night? They explained. The friend nodded. I remember. Your person looked surprised. What? You called me afterward. Your person froze. I did? Yes. The friend smiled slightly. You talked about them for almost an hour. Your person stared. I didn't say I loved them. No. The friend leaned back. But you said something else. What? The friend hesitated. Then. You said, I think this is the first person I could actually imagine staying for. Your person stopped breathing. They remembered. Faintly. A late conversation. Emotion high. Guard down. They had said it. Then apparently buried the memory because it revealed too much. The friend continued. You made me promise not to tell anyone. Your person looked almost betrayed. You weren't supposed to bring that up. I know. Then why are you? Because you need to remember that you made a choice before fear talked you out of it. Your person became quiet. A choice. They had already known. Weeks ago. Maybe months. Somewhere inside, they had decided you were not temporary. They had imagined staying. What did that mean? Staying emotionally. Staying when conflict happened. Staying through vulnerability. Allowing something to become real. But then fear returned. And instead of moving closer, they did what they always did. They created distance. The best friend asked. What happened after that? Your person knew exactly what happened. The next time you got close, they panicked. Maybe you said something that implied a future. Maybe you asked where this was going. Maybe you simply became warmer. And your person pulled away. They became less responsive. More cautious. They told themselves they needed space. And you noticed. Of course you noticed. The friend said. You know what I think? Your person looked exhausted. What? I think you already chose them. You're just terrified of behaving like somebody who chose. That sentence settled differently. Choosing someone privately is easy. No risk. No responsibility. You can love someone inside your own mind forever. But behaving like you chose someone requires clarity, consistency, showing up, allowing the person to make decisions with the truth. And that was exactly where your person had failed. They whispered, "I think I've messed this up." The friend asked, "Why?" "They're different now." Your person told them about you becoming quieter. The change in messages. The way you no longer seem to wait around. The friend listened. Then asked, "Did they tell you they're done?" "No." "Did they tell you they don't care?" "No." Then stop writing the ending for them. Your person looked up. "What am I supposed to do?" The answer came simply. "Talk." Your person laughed sadly. "You make that sound easy." "It isn't." The friend replied. "But it's easier than spending the next 5 years telling me about the person you lost because you were afraid to send a message." That hurt. Because your person could imagine it. You becoming a story. A regret. The one person they never told. Someone they occasionally searched for online years later, wondering what would have happened if fear had not made the decision. That future terrified them. They picked up their phone. Your conversation. There. Your last message. Something ordinary. Maybe several hours old. They stared at it. The friend watched. Type. Your person did. "I need to tell you something." Deleted. The friend groaned. "You deleted it, didn't you?" Your person laughed despite the tears. "Yes." "Why?" "It sounds terrifying." "That's because it's honest." Your person tried again. "I've been thinking about us." Deleted. The friend shook their head. "Stop trying to make it sound pretty." Your person became frustrated. "Then what do I say?" The friend answered. "What you just said to me." Your person went quiet. "I love them." The words felt enormous. Too enormous for a message. "What if they don't feel the same?" The friend replied. "Then you'll know." "What if they do?" That was the real fear. The friend smiled sadly. "Then you'll have to stop hiding." Your person stared at them. Exactly. Rejection was frightening. Reciprocity might have been even more frightening. Because if you loved them too, there would be no excuse left. No uncertainty to hide behind. Something real would begin. And real things require care. Your person asked. "What if I hurt them?" The friend answered. "You probably will eventually." Your person looked horrified. The friend continued. "And they'll probably hurt you. Not because either of you are evil. Because people make mistakes. Then. The question isn't whether you can guarantee you'll never hurt them. It's whether you can learn to repair instead of disappear. Repair instead of disappear." Your person repeated the phrase. That was perhaps the skill they had never learned. Whenever conflict happened, distance. Whenever vulnerability became uncomfortable, distance. Whenever they feared they had said too much, distance. But relationships are not built by people who never create problems. They are built by people who remain willing to face problems together. Your person looked at your name again. Then they typed. I've been unfair to you. They stopped. The friend said nothing. Your person continued. I think I've known how I feel for longer than I've admitted. Their breathing became faster. And instead of telling you, I kept pulling away every time it became real. They stared. This was already the most honest message they had ever written you. Then. You didn't deserve to have to guess. Their eyes filled again. They pressed send. Delivered. They immediately put the phone face down. I'm going to be sick. The friend laughed softly. No, you're not. What if they answer? That's usually how messages work. Your person glared. But the humor helped. A minute passed. Nothing. Then 2. Your person's hand moved toward the phone. The friend stopped them. Give them time. I just want to check. You've checked 6 times. It's been 2 minutes. Exactly. Finally, the phone vibrated. Your person grabbed it. Your name. Your reply. What happened? Your person stared. The same question everyone seemed to ask when they finally became honest. What happened? As though vulnerability was so unusual that something external must have caused it. And that realization hurt too. They had trained you to expect distance. So honesty looked suspicious. They typed. My best friend called me out. You replied. For what? Your person looked at the friend. The friend raised an eyebrow as if saying, tell them. Your person wrote. For pretending I don't know what I feel. You took longer. Then. And what do you feel? Everything stopped. The friend could tell from your person's expression. What did they say? Your person showed them. The friend smiled. There you go. Your person shook their head. I can't. Yes, you can. What if I mess it up? Then at least mess it up honestly. Your person almost laughed. Then they looked at your question again. What do you feel? No more room. No more safe middle. They typed. I love you. 3 words. Then deleted them. The friend saw. Seriously? I need a second. You've had months. That line landed. Months. Maybe longer. Your person typed again. I love you. This time they did not stare too long. They pressed send. Delivered. Their entire body went still. The friend did too. Both stared at the phone. Nothing. Your person whispered. This was a terrible idea. The friend replied. Give them a minute. Then your typing indicator appeared. Your person stopped breathing. Your response. I don't know what to do with that. Their heart sank. But before panic could take over, another message came. Because I've wanted you to say it. Hope. Then another. But I'm angry that you waited until I started pulling away. There it was. The exact thing the best friend had forced them to face. Your person replied. You have every right to be. That answer surprised you. No defense. No, I was scared, immediately after. No attempt to make your anger disappear. You asked. Do you understand why? They typed. I think so. Then. Because loving you privately didn't give you anything to build trust on. Silence. Your response. Yes. One word. Your person felt tears again. But differently. Maybe because they finally understood. They wrote. I don't want to tell you this so you'll stop pulling away. Pause. I want to tell you because you deserve to know even if you decide you're already done. The friend watched your person's face carefully. That sentence mattered. Because they were finally separating truth from control. Your answer took a long time. Then. I'm not done. Your person's eyes widened. The friend noticed. What? Your person showed them. The friend smiled. But your next message came almost immediately. I'm just done carrying it by myself. The SME. You came back because there was still one missing piece. One moment your soulmate did not know about. One thing you had seen that quietly changed the way you responded to them long before their best friend ever exposed the secret. And when your person finally asked you about it, you did not answer immediately. Not because you wanted to make them suffer. Not because you were trying to create drama. Because the truth was difficult to explain without admitting how deeply it had affected you. The person you love had just spent the entire night opening up in ways they had never done before. They admitted they loved you. They admitted they had imagined staying. They admitted fear had made them pull away. And now, for the first time, they were about to discover that while they were privately wrestling with those feelings, you had been interpreting something completely different from the outside. Stay with me here, because this is where the entire story turns. Your soulmate sent you a message the next morning. Nothing dramatic. Just, there's something I need to ask you about. You saw it. Your stomach tightened slightly because part of you already knew what was coming. You replied, okay. They typed, my friend said you saw something involving me and misunderstood it. Silence. You stared at the screen. That sentence brought the memory back instantly. The night. The place. The image. The way your chest felt when you saw it. And suddenly all the emotional protection you had built around that moment felt thin. Your soulmate waited. Then sent another message. I'm not asking to argue. I just want to understand. That mattered. Because months ago, maybe you would not have trusted them with the answer. But after last night, something had shifted enough that you were willing to try. You wrote, I saw you with someone. Their heart immediately started racing. Who? You replied, you know who. That answer made them nervous because there were only a few possibilities. Then you sent the name. And your soulmate froze. Not because they had been hiding an affair. Not because something romantic had happened. Because suddenly they understood exactly what you must have believed. The person you saw was someone from their past. Someone they had once been deeply connected to. Maybe an ex. Maybe someone they had almost built a relationship with. Someone whose name carried history. And you had seen them together. Not secretly. Not necessarily doing anything wrong. But close enough that from the outside, it looked intimate. Familiar. Comfortable. And because your soulmate had never clearly told you where you stood, your mind filled in the empty spaces. Of course it did. Silence always gets filled with a story. You wrote, "I saw the two of you talking. You looked happy." Your soulmate immediately wanted to explain. It wasn't, then they stopped. Because they remembered the promise they had made to themselves. Do not interrupt someone's experience just because you know your intention. So instead, they wrote, "Tell me what you thought." That question surprised you. You expected defense. Maybe denial. Instead they were asking you to explain. So you did. "I thought I finally understood why you kept pulling away." Your soulmate stared at the words. You continued. "I thought you still wanted them." Another message. "And I thought maybe I had been stupid for believing there was something real between us." Their chest tightened. Because now they could see how all the pieces connected. Their emotional distance. Their history with this person. The scene you witnessed. No clarity. From your side, it probably looked obvious. They typed, "You weren't stupid." You answered, "It felt like it." That hurt them. Again, because of impact. They may have known the truth. You did not. They wrote, "What exactly did you see?" You explained. You had been passing by somewhere. Maybe a restaurant. Maybe a gathering. Maybe a parking lot after an event. You saw your soulmate and this person standing close, speaking quietly. Then that person touched their arm. Your soulmate smiled. Maybe even hugged them goodbye. It lasted only seconds. But seconds can become an entire story when someone already feels uncertain. You did not walk over. You did not ask. You did not create a scene. You simply watched from a distance and felt something inside you collapse. Not because they were technically yours. They were not. That was part of the pain. You had no defined relationship. No promise. No agreement. So what right did you even have to feel jealous? That question made everything worse. You went home telling yourself, "This is exactly why I need to stop caring." And from that night forward, your energy changed. You still responded. Still cared. But you stopped leaning forward emotionally. You told yourself you would not compete with someone from their past. You would not ask them to choose. You would not put yourself in the position of trying to prove you were better. And because your soulmate never explained what happened, your interpretation became reality. Your person read all of this and felt a wave of regret. They typed, "I wish you had asked me." You stared at the message. Then replied, "Would you have answered?" That question stopped them completely. Months ago? Would they? Maybe not honestly enough. They knew it. You continued, that's why I didn't ask. Silence. Every time I tried to ask what was happening between us before that, you became vague. Another message. I didn't want to ask one more question and feel embarrassed for caring. That sentence went straight through them. Your soulmate leaned back and covered their face. The scene itself had been innocent. But your fear was not irrational. It had been built on a pattern. Their pattern. They finally replied, "You're right." Then, I probably would have made it complicated. You did not answer immediately. Your soulmate continued, "Do you want to know what actually happened?" You hesitated. Then wrote, "Yes." This was the moment they could finally give context. Not to prove you wrong. To fill in the space that should never have been left empty. Your soulmate explained that the person you saw had reached out because of something practical. Maybe returning something. Maybe discussing a mutual friend. Maybe closing an old issue. They had met briefly. The hug you saw was goodbye. Nothing had restarted. No secret romance. No plan to reconnect. In fact, your soulmate told you something even more surprising. "Do you know what I thought about after I left?" You replied, "What?" They answered, "You." You stared at the message. They continued. That conversation made me realize how different I felt compared to the past. Another line. I remember thinking I felt more emotionally connected to you than I did standing in front of someone I used to know that well. Your chest tightened. Because all this time, you had interpreted that night as proof they belonged somewhere else. For them, it had been almost the opposite. But because they never told you, both of you carried two entirely different versions of the same event. And maybe that was the deepest lesson of this whole fictional story. It is possible for two people to experience the same moment and leave with completely opposite realities when there is no communication. You thought the scene proved you were second choice. Your soulmate thought the scene proved the past no longer had power. And neither of you knew what the other believed. Your soulmate wrote, "I wish I had told you." You replied, "I wish you had too." That was not accusation anymore. It was grief for lost clarity. They asked, "Did that night make you start pulling away?" Your answer, "Yes." Their stomach dropped, even though they already knew. You continued, "Not all at once. But after that, I stopped letting myself imagine too much." There it was. The future you may have imagined with them. Quietly closed. Not destroyed completely. Protected. You began limiting hope because hope without information felt dangerous. Your soulmate stared at your words and remembered everything their best friend had said. You had not stopped caring. You had stopped carrying. They wrote, "I'm sorry I gave you so much room to misunderstand." You replied, "I also could have asked." That surprised them. You were taking responsibility for your side too. You continued, "I know I shut down instead." Another message. I think part of me wanted the worst explanation because it gave me a reason to stop being vulnerable. Your soulmate froze. Because that sounded familiar. You had your own fear pattern too. Not identical, but real. When uncertainty hurt, you protected yourself by assuming the ending. It created distance before you could be rejected openly. Your soulmate replied, so we both hid. You answered, in different ways. And that realization softened something. This was no longer a simple story of one person hurting another and one person being innocent. It was two people with different defenses accidentally creating a cycle together. Your soulmate became distant when feelings deepened. You became emotionally self-contained when their distance felt unsafe. Their retreat triggered your withdrawal. Your withdrawal triggered their panic. And around the pattern went, while both people privately cared more than either admitted. If you're enjoying this fictional soulmate-style emotional story, subscribe and stay close, because what happens next is the moment the best friend reveals the secret behind that old connection, and your soulmate finally realizes why they were so afraid you had misunderstood it. Your soulmate asked, "Can I tell you something else about that person?" You replied, "Okay." They explained that yes, the history had once been serious. More serious than they had probably admitted. But the relationship taught them something painful. In that old connection, affection had often been inconsistent. One day intense, another distant. Your soulmate became addicted to trying to repair the distance. They learned to associate uncertainty with love. They learned to chase clarity from someone who kept withholding it. And when it ended, they promised themselves they would never become that vulnerable again. But instead of healing the pattern completely, they swung to the opposite side. They became the distant one. They started withholding before anyone else could. They protected themselves so well that now they were creating the same emotional uncertainty they once hated. The irony was brutal. Your soulmate wrote, "I think I became the thing that hurt me." You read that slowly. Then replied, "Not completely." They asked, "What do you mean?" You wrote, "The fact that you can see it matters." Another line. But seeing it and changing it are different. There it was. Grounded. Fair. Your soulmate did not argue. "I know." Then they told you something the best friend had revealed after the breakdown. Apparently, long before you ever saw that scene, the best friend had warned your soulmate about exactly this pattern. The friend had said, "You're treating someone new like they're responsible for what someone old did." Your soulmate had dismissed it. They thought they were simply being cautious. Now they understood. You had been paying for wounds you never created. Every time they expected abandonment without evidence. Every time they kept one foot out the door. Every time they needed you to prove your feelings while refusing to expose their own. The past was still shaping the present. You responded, "That explains a lot." But you did not say it excused everything. Your soulmate appreciated that distinction. They asked, "Can I ask what you feel now?" You hesitated. This was the question both of you kept returning to. But this time, the context was different. You had more information. The old scene no longer meant what you thought. The confession was real. Their pattern was visible. Still, trust could not be restored in one conversation. You wrote, I care. Your soulmate's heart lifted. Then you added, but caring isn't the same as feeling safe. That sentence matched what the friend had said earlier. Knowing someone loves you and feeling safe with how they love you are not the same. Your soulmate replied, I understand. You asked, do you? They wrote, I think I'm starting to. Then, I can't ask you to trust a new version of me that only exists in words. You read it. Exactly. Your soulmate continued, so I want to show you. You replied, how? They answered honestly. Slowly. That surprised you. No grand promise. I think I've been trying to solve everything in one night because I'm scared. Another line. But I probably need to do boring things well. You almost laughed. Boring things? They explained. Reply when I say I will. Tell you when something is wrong. Not disappear after a vulnerable conversation. Ask instead of assume. Let you have your own life without turning every distance into rejection. That sounded real. You replied, yes. Boring things. The tension broke slightly. Maybe both of you smiled. There was something comforting about recognizing that love did not need to be constantly dramatic to be meaningful. Sometimes the strongest proof is ordinary consistency. The next few days became exactly that. Your soulmate did not flood you with attention. They did not suddenly send romantic paragraphs every hour. That would have felt like panic. Instead, they showed up. If they said good morning, they did not disappear immediately afterward. If you asked something uncomfortable, they tried to answer. When fear appeared, they named it. One evening, you took longer than usual to reply. Old panic rose in your soulmate instantly. Their mind created stories. You were losing interest. Maybe you were with someone else. Maybe everything had been too much. Their fingers almost closed the conversation. Old pattern. Pull away first. But this time, they stopped. They wrote. I'm noticing I'm getting anxious because you haven't replied, and my brain is making up stories. I know that's mine to manage. I just wanted to be honest. You saw the message later. And something about it affected you. They had not accused you. Not demanded an explanation. They named the fear without turning it into your fault. You replied, I was with family. Thank you for telling me instead of disappearing. Your soulmate smiled. Small win. Another day, they became overwhelmed after a difficult conversation between you. The urge to withdraw returned. Instead, they said, I need a little time to think, but I'm not leaving the conversation. Can we continue tomorrow? You answered, yes. The next day, they returned. That mattered more than the words themselves. They came back. You noticed. Slowly, your nervous system began learning something new too. Maybe every pause did not mean abandonment. Maybe every difficult conversation did not end in silence. Your own defensive pattern softened slightly. You began asking instead of assuming sometimes. One night, something felt off in their tone. You might have stepped back without explanation. Instead, you wrote, "You sound distant. Is it me, or are you just having a rough day?" Your soulmate answered, "Rough day. Not you." Simple. No spiral. No two-day misunderstanding. Both of you started realizing how much suffering could be avoided by one clear sentence. But there was still a larger question. What were you now? Friends? More? Trying? Your soulmate had confessed love, but neither of you had defined what followed. Maybe that was okay temporarily. But eventually clarity would matter again. And your soulmate knew they could not hide behind "let's see" forever. So one evening, they asked, "Can we talk about what we're actually doing?" You felt nervous. But this time, nervous did not mean run.